So it's been a few days now since the last update out in the shed. I've spent a lot of the time working on the CAD for Dead Metal. Seems a bit of an odd robot to CAD up, considering it's all meant to be scrap, but as I mentioned previously, I don't have any molds or any kind of template for size. So I've just been looking through the pictures from the Dead Metal folder that I covered the last time, using it as a reference point and trying things out in CAD just to see what kind of fits and what doesn't. So the CAD at the moment, it's not obviously a complete Dead Metal finished stage, but I've got everything in it that I need to get parts such as the claws and the base plate and the wheel guards and everything laser cut, so that I can then get them all as a big jigsaw puzzle and tack them together, and it'll hopefully come together quite quickly. So just looking at what we've got in the CAD here, it's just a kind of basic 3D model of what looks to be Dead Metal-ish. Obviously we've got the saw in the middle here. It moves on a 4-bar linkage, which if I just bring that in, so it moves forward and down into the claws, and when this is in the right place, there's a ram that sits in the chassis here, which bolts onto the hinge point of the 4-bar mechanism there. So as that ram moves in and out, zoom out better, as that ram moves out, the saw moves down, and if I bring that and that into play, so this ram sits in the side of the chassis here, roughly pretty much bang on the side of the base plate, and extends out to the 4-bar mechanism there. So the second ram is in the base of the robot here, and if I just switch back to the side view, let's hide that. So that's the ram that extends the mechanism out. This one that runs along the base, when the saw mechanism is retracted, so when it's back in about that position there, the saw goes through, the ram goes through an attachment onto this rear leg. So I've got a little hinge point there, and when the arm comes back, the ram connects onto there. So when the saw mechanism is extended out, the ram that's now here pivots up the way and sits sits a wee bit short, so it sits roughly in line there. There's a gap here, but there'll be a spring on the ram which kind of fills that gap up. It doesn't matter if it doesn't close all the way, because when the saw is going forward, it's the other ram that's pushing it out, and this ram's only getting gas in it to push that way, which brings the saw mechanism back, and then this ram finishes roughly in that position there. So I'll just hide all the unnecessary rams again. I'll just take the saw assembly away as well, temporarily. So if I pivot round, there's just a basic kind of U-frame. That's the best way to show this. There's a U-frame that comes up and over, and that supports the saw mechanism from above. And then there are these upright struts there and there. So as the whole saw mechanism moves forward, so do these bits. And that gives the 4-bar linkage mechanism that allows the saw to kind of dip forward. Well, I've got the base plate away as well. You can see the rams mounted vertically here. They are for the adjustable drive height. So they're only 100mm stroke, so it's not a huge amount, but when they actuate out, the drive lowers down as well. So this is an angle of the underside of dead metal, and if I just zoom in, I've got these brackets fitted onto a kind of strut that spans the two wheel pods and is joined together. So I've got a bracket here which is just where the ram pokes out, and one on the corresponding side as well. And what that does, if I just find the RAM file, so that's that one there, and I'll just adjust this to its 150. Oh, 158. If it's full stroke, reassemble that and save. And then if we bring dead metal back up, it adjusts the rams, and what you can see now is that the pistons have come out, pushed out, and the whole wheel mechanisms have pivoted from, there's a shaft at the back here, so the wheel mechanisms pivot around this shaft in the chassis, and the two rams poke out the base and push this down, and that allows dead metal to get the kind of extra ride height that you see on the show when it's moving up and down. A bit of a squeeze to get everything in the chassis, but managed it all in the end. And just last but not least, I'll take the saw mechanism away again. What we've also got in the base is the ram for the claws. And this is a 250mm stroke ram, but the claws actually only require 200mm for full opening and closing. So I'm just going to put a collar over that to stop the ram going back as far as 250mm. This is a hydraulic ram, which is what they also used in dead metal in the show as well, because it stands up to the abuse of robots bashing into the claws. And if I just call that file up as well, so that's the ram at its full extent. So, or at least I think it is. So if we go back to dead metal, yep. So you can see now the claws are opened up to their full capacity. And if I go back to that ram and reduce that to 100, I think that's right, and reduce that to 487. That's the ram. Although it's not fully retracted, that's it having retracted 200mm. So I'll just need to put a sleeve over this point here just to stop the ram physically from going back any further. And if we bring up dead metal again, you can see the claws have now closed. So the shape of the claws seems to be right. I've kind of made all this up and just trial and error to get it all right, but it looks pretty good. Looks like dead metal. And even when the claws are closed, I'll bring the saw back in. Saw assembly show. So even when the claws are closed, it looks to be the right kind of proportions and so on. At the back I do have a cylinder which is meant to represent a fire extinguisher, or CO2 bottle I should say, for robots. On the original dead metal, the CO2 bottle was a smaller one than the standard 2 kilo one that I've got in here, and it would sit inside this part here. Unfortunately, the 2 kilo bottle doesn't fit, and I can't really find any good 1 kilo bottles or possibly half a kilo bottles. So I'm going to get a couple of smaller paintball bottles and tee them together, and probably run the pneumatics off a compressor system. It makes it a lot safer. Obviously dead metal's got a lot of weaponry and a lot of sharp, pointy, sticky outy bits, so accessing the robot in order to turn on gas and to put links in and to access dump valves is quite risky. So by switching to a converter, try that again, switching to a compressor, once the link is in, I can flick a switch and the compressor will come on and charge up the air tanks. I can then operate the pneumatics as normal. Come the end of the fight, I can flick a switch, compressor turns off, and then all the Arena Marshal needs to do is open the dump valve and dump any remaining air from the system. So it's a lot safer. It means I don't need to worry about having to get CO2 tanks filled up. It just means it's all relatively self-contained, so as soon as it turns on, it charges up the pressure from there. So the next main step for this is to put all the sketches I've got from all the parts into a 2D layout, and send those off to a company to be cut, probably laser cut, and then they'll send that in the post, and then I can just start getting it all assembled. So hopefully, fingers crossed, I'll actually have some physical dead metal parts in not too long. I mean, it's now the 1st of July, yep, 1st of July today, so hopefully maybe within a couple of weeks I'll be ready to start the actual build.